I want to thank our tireless, selfless hosts, the Ides, and those that help them to keep these meetings going. This is So Kathy, in an email, I found out what I was supposed to be talking about, and it's way too broad. So I'm going to try to be respectful of our time, have some fun, talk about topics that you want to talk about, and just try to give you a little background on the experiences that have occurred over the last, particularly 14 months of being Wyoming Republican Party chairman. And it's a lot of ground to cover, but we can hit the highlights, and hopefully I can share my experiences with you in a meaningful way. It's been valuable. So what I brought today for your use, and this is what we're all about, because as many of you are in the grassroots, we form a statement of what we believe. We start at our county level, it goes through state convention, and nearly 500 delegates vote on this, so it's an important document. And this year is the first year that I believe the state party has gone to the effort to do a brochure form on just the platform. It's a simple little handout deal. It's a good communication tool. We've only got 19, and they're not numbered in here. They're just listed. And so please take a copy from over at the table before you leave. The artwork comes from Campbell County, so it just reflects the ranching heritage grassroots emphasis that the party members, the conservative state central committee, I might add, that represents you in the party, have. That's our focus and our emphasis. The other document I brought for you to take, and I have more out in the vehicle if you need them. This is the platform plus the resolutions and the bylaws. And we printed these not only to give to elected officials, but to give to the grassroots to know what the party believes in. And let me mention Trinity as I get started. She has a super important role in the party. We brought her on as comms director, and she has helped launch our presence, especially on social media. And she is such a great tool. She's technically astute. She's grounded in principle, as you heard tonight if you didn't know her before. And that means there's a lot of confidence and trust. Not only is she a platform supporter, but she knows how to act on it. She knows how to get the message out.
He just called you a tool.
She's a total. That's the way we keep our relationship professional. Tonight, though, she mentioned peacemaking. And I did not realize coming into the chairmanship, this goes back to some church and some biblical training, some scriptural training, to do with a Christian's role, is not a peace. We need to be peacemakers, because that's not a passive role. It's an active role. It's a biblical role, and I believe it's a huge part of any leader's role, because if you can't bring people together, you're not going to satisfy every individual, even from the most to the least principle. So peacemaking is an important way to bring everybody together on the things we agree on, and that really, I think, is what sums up a large portion of this job. And it can't just be peacemaking by Frank's standards. So that takes us right back to the platform and what we believe in. And when you read this, I think you'll see a lot of scripture in here, because that's where the party's at. That's the heart and soul of the party right here, is what we stand for in our beliefs in writing. Now, one thing I will add so we have these principles that we want to protect and promote, and we have expectations of our elected officials to uphold those. But we know that Wyoming is a ruggedly individual state, and so there are all sorts of personalities to deal with, and you can't always come together on everything, and you won't. You can't do it in your marriage, can't do it in your family, and it's not going to happen in government. But one thing that can take place is, as I stated before, finding those areas that are bedrock principles, that are non-negotiables, and by the best methods you can, bring everybody together on those. And that includes what Chuck mentioned tonight too, the proper role of government. We wouldn't have our form of government if it weren't spelled out in Deuteronomy and given us a blueprint for freedom to follow. So most of what I talk about tonight is going to relate to peacemaking, the chairman's role, based on a document that we as Republicans have agreed on. And that is my focus Anytime that is strayed from, there's gonna be trouble. There's gonna be turbulence. There's gonna be disagreement, and worst of all, there's gonna be unhealthy conflict. We all want to see change in government. And I would submit to you that the most important part of that change is the rate in which we do it. We know which direction we want to go. And there are what I call dyed-in-the-wool, die-hard conservatives that I do, and they come to me and they complain about things, and rightfully so. They say, this is wrong, that's wrong, we've got socialism, we've got overspending, we don't protect life, we're dealing with these SOGI ordinances and potential legislation, and they just want to throw up their hands and say, it's got to be fixed right now. And I say, it does need to be fixed, and we do need to turn these things around, and we do need to lead through messaging. We need to be the proactive ones and lead with these ideas so that alternative ideas don't become more popular than our bedrock beliefs. But the rate of change is what I would ask you to think about and consider. When an elected official leads in a direction that is contrary to the platform, contrary to what we as Republicans believe, how do we deal with that? And I'll list a few ways in which the state party is setting out to deal with that. And I would say our state party is the most unified conservative bunch that I've ever worked with and had the pleasure to be around. And if we can continue electing those types in our state party leadership from the counties, the better off we'll be. We'll keep moving at that rate of change. It's like the Titanic steaming for the iceberg at 40 miles an hour. You can't turn it at 180 and expect to dodge the iceberg. You have to first slow it down. Then you start to turn the wheel. And that is difficult enough, believe me. That causes all kinds of conflict. It has to be worked through a little spot fire at a time. That takes a lot of energy and a lot of teamwork and a lot of unity to get through those type of conflicts. So let me get to some of the more fun and interesting events and experiences as state party chairman. So I've been in the position for about 14 months, feels like years. December of 17, I was invited to Trump's White House Christmas party. I had never been to DC before, I had never met a president before, and I'd never been to the White House before. And all three things happened in one night, and it was amazing. I have the pictures to prove it. And I do admire the man. I do. I don't hold it against him that he's from New York City, in New York, when he's doing the things he's doing, and he really does believe in our platform. Setting everything else aside, that's what I focus on, and that's why I support him. Also, have we ever had a more stellar vice president than Mike Pence?
That's right.
Yeah. So a month later, we had an RNC meeting in DC, so here we go right back to DC, and I don't like. But now that the previous administration is somewhat cleaned out, it's still swampy, you still got to wear your muck boots. But you get to meet people like Trump and Pence, and they come, they're involved with the RNC. We have a very tight relationship. Wyoming works well, conservative states work well in the RNC. We are now the voice of the RNC. And I don't know how much you listen to or have paid attention to Chairwoman McDaniel's messaging, but she's good. She's good for the party, she's good for Wyoming. She's good for conservatives. So we have lots of teamwork opportunities that are forming, and the RNC is getting stronger. That's an organization I would not have supported and did not support in past years. Now, whole different story. And it's not just because I'm meeting these people and I get to know their hearts. It is because I see the action they're taking. Did you know that we passed the Justice for Western Ranchers without a debate in a recent RNC meeting? Yeah. So state party did the same thing.
What is that?
It's in here, and it's the longest resolution. It's the reason there are 3 pages just devoted to that resolution. So pick up this book, look in the resolutions forms, and you'll see Justice for Western Ranchers. That was heavily supported in the counties right through state convention. And at state convention, there were debate points brought up by attorneys, by the way, that Didn't even come up at the RNC meeting. And in a way, I was a little embarrassed for Wyoming, but we did get the right thing done. State party events, let's get focused back on Wyoming. If you're going to run a state party, you have to raise money. You cannot operate an office, you can't have any paid staff, you can't keep the doors open, the lights on, you can't keep a website maintained if you don't have funds. And that was one of my biggest fears. I'm not a fundraiser, but we've put together a team. We've mostly functioned through events. We did a legislative appreciation dinner. That was the first one. That was a big success. Then we had the Governor's Gala. Now that was a previous chairman's idea, but I saw opportunity. And I think we pulled it off without compromising. I'm just going to say that. It was a good event. And it brought people together. And I heard some Republicans that hadn't been engaged, and I'm going to say they were probably establishment, wealthy type Republicans, that came up and thanked me and my team, saying, we haven't seen this kind of unity in the party for a long time. Now, did that cost us much to do that? Did we have to move their way? No. But they supported us. And in a big enough way, takes us right to your question, sir, about candidate funding. Did you know that State Central Committee refused to fund even conservatives that felt they had to vote for private-public ventures? Some would say socialist. State Party held the line and said, we're not going to fund you. And that was difficult. I would name names and tell you stories, but I think, you know, even a couple of our conservative legislators, they understood. But because of who they represent, their constituents in their district, they felt they had to make that vote. They won without us, and that's good, because we need them. The House is concerning. Senate in Wyoming is looking strong. Leadership as well. And that brings me to another point about when it comes to elected officials and the rate of change, conflict, healthy conflict resolution, peacemaking. We cannot force the hands of those who are not with us. There are some, and you know them, they have their own agenda. They separate themselves, they distance themselves from the party, and we try to draw them in. That's one of my jobs. But if they're not going to return phone calls, if they're not going to meet in person, if they don't return emails, there's not a whole lot more I can do. So what do? We build coalitions and teams around them with everybody that does think the party is relevant and does care enough about what we believe. Even if they only agree with 40%, we still have enough commonality and a starting point to work with, which breeds hope. So I could tell you a lot about the national scene, but that's not where my focus is. I'm a Wyoming native, and Wyoming is my focus. Ever since I've started in politics as a precinct committee man in Converse County, my focus has always been more on local and particularly statewide issues. And today that remains my focus. But we do have collaborative team members. The state chairman of Washington. Washington has good conservatives in there. They're not the majority, but they're with us. Montana, there's incredible changes going on in Montana. Their leadership, these rural western Montana folks, they're like us, and they are leading that party fearlessly. In fact, that's where the resolution for the Justice for Western Ranchers originated. It was a state committee woman from Montana. I have a ton of respect for Jennifer Fielder. Utah's with us. Their chairman's not, but their national committee man and woman are, as well as Idaho. Idaho chairman, fine lady, rancher. She's a sheep rancher, so her and I have a lot in common. Great people, and we plan to work together. We're just getting to know each other, even though most of us have been together about 4 RNC meetings so far. We're just getting rolling and understanding how many of us that have like values are serving on the same committee. And as I go back to the votes that we've had in the RNC, it reflects the valued people are there. The opposition really doesn't even exist to oppose us. Chuck mentioned, one of the concerns we have talking about the legislature and voters in Wyoming. He said Laramie and Jackson, I referred to it as the blue counties of Albany and Teton. Got to keep our eyes on them. The Republican in Teton County is becoming an endangered species. They didn't elect any Republicans in their county at all. Any Republicans on the ballot did not prevail. And as you know, when it comes to crossover voting, that's where the dollars came from. It was Teton County, a gal named Liz, somebody might know her last name. Say? Yeah. And then I guess a rancher from Park County. I'd sure like to meet him because it sounds like we are polar opposites. He helped fund that. So what can we do about the crossover? Well, we've had a bill in 2 sessions ago, the last general session, that was intended to close the primary, and it narrowly failed. And there are some of these blue heron arguments against it. Well, the Wyoming Republican Party has resolved to get this solved, and we're going to need your help. And there's another issue I'm going to call for your help upon. We are calling it Flip the Switch. And the reason, if you haven't heard about it now, it was called Switch or the crossover, right? Democrats register as Republicans and they can influence our primary. Well, we've had enough of it. And Trinity and I were brainstorming as soon as she came on. We said, what are we going to call this effort? We're going to counter this crossover deal. So we're going to call it Flip the Switch. But in order to not step on any toes before the general, we're going to stay quiet. Well, now it's game on. The general's over, and we are ready to flip the switch. And so I want to encourage all of you, the best way for you to keep in contact with what our priorities are, our legislative priorities, especially that's going to be our focus from now till the end of the session, is stay in tune with wyoming.gop. Use that website. It is the most interactive. I've seen it ever. I'm not a techie person, but it's a powerful site. You can do a lot of things. You can sign up and volunteer. You can give input. Go to Facebook, the Wyoming Republican Party Facebook page. Trinity, help me. What's the easiest way to access that?
You just go to Facebook, Wyoming Republican Party.
Thank you. Yep, that's where it's happening. If there's anything current, Trinity's going to be leading that, and you're going to see it on our Facebook page. And that's where we're going to need most of the attention focused. It's been brought up already tonight about management council and legislative leadership. These are big deals. And we, as the state party, it's probably less certain that we have a role here, even though it's very much on our minds. We have individuals within the State Central Committee, and most of you probably know Carl Allred or heard of him. You know, he's a smart guy, he's an activist, he's dedicated, and he's going to lead a private effort to reach constituents, and some of you are those constituents, to influence those that may say, oh, I think I'm going to elect a repeat Speaker of the House. Well, here's some of the thoughts to counter that. Is there no one else in the Wyoming House of Representatives that's capable of leading? Do we really? Is the pool that small that we need to repeat? Not only that, look at history and precedents. This will be the first time it's ever been done, I've been told. So to my knowledge, why would we do that? Are we that small of a state? Do we not have the faith in others who have paid their dues, been reelected time after time, and are really in line to be the next speaker, the next president? The Senate, I think, is leading properly in that way. And I see, as I mentioned before, the Senate is very hopeful. I think they're going to be capable of stopping some bad ideas and promoting some good ideas. And they're going to need our engagement to do that. They're going to need to know that Republicans around the state and voters are behind them. We need to remind our elected officials when we support them, not just when we disagree with them. Now that's most of the political things I want to talk about. How are we doing on time? Getting close? Okay. Since you asked me to talk about ICAO, it's also my heart and soul, the ag community. That's my bread and butter, and there are important ag issues that ICAO is on top of. ICAO is becoming more laser focused thanks to our new president, who is exceeding my capabilities of leadership, and I'm very thankful that Bobby Giese is here tonight from Lusk. And we may have a topic or two to call on him about. So even Bob Ide brought me this article right here. I just want to bring up the beef checkoff. this affects you as consumers, and so does Cool. So I'll talk about both topics. The beef checkoff is it's basically a tax, and it's a freedom of speech issue, $1 a head that comes off every head of livestock sold that goes into a promotion program. And at first it was voluntary. Every time I sold a cow, I sent $1 into the beef checkoff, and then you heard a beef commercial on TV or the radio. And for a time you could see the market share go up, and the price of beef was getting stronger, and consumption was going up. And then something changed. The hierarchy got involved, and they decided to change it from from voluntary to mandatory, and took away our option to vote it up or down. Then once they did that, they got a little carried away with their expenditures, and an independent audit discovered that instead of promoting beef and raising market strength for beef cuts for Wyoming ranchers, they were spending their dollars in Hawaii and golf and fancy dinners and on and on. And so it was ironic that at the time the Wyoming legislature was being pushed by the stock growers to double the checkoff to increase that fun little slush fund, this independent audit came out and exposed them for what they were doing. And ICAL stood up and helped defeat that effort. They're not done. They want to come back. They like it. They're addicted to that money. And if they would use it for what it's intended for, cattlemen would support it. But we know that it's a corrupt system. It's a very closed political system, who knows who. And it's actually, those dollars are being used to feed and grow our competitors against us, the packers. We're competing against them, and they are trying to corral us so that they have captive supply. And they are making successes. And it affects you as a customer. The checkoff does, just in much the same way that Cool does. How many of you, if you go to the grocery store and you see a section and you're shopping for beef that night, and you see USA beef and you see Argentine beef and you see another third world country beef, what are you going to select? Well, that's a factor. Price is a factor. But if you keep in mind some of the third world countries and the disease struggles that they face and the health risks that they bring to our shores, you might say, this might be a good time not to buy Argentine beef. I really don't want to bring foot and mouth home to my family. So we had Cool, and Cool benefited everybody. The consumer knew where their meat was coming from, and the producer was able to brand their beef and say, I truly have USA beef. It's not foreign beef, and it's not mixed with foreign beef. But once Congress got involved and took away Cool, it really hurt private family ranchers, and the consumer's choice was then deceased. So that's where ICAL stands. We need to eliminate the checkoff, and we need to bring Cool back. And we are working through channels. It's unfortunate our Sonny Perdue, our main ag guy, appointed by the president, is more international interest than he is about small family corporations. That's a big part of it. So we've got an uphill battle. But if the consumer will stand up and say, I demand USA beef, eventually you'll win, because the market will dictate.